And now we have AJ Juliani. Am I
How you
pronouncing
doing?
that right?
Yeah, AJ Juliani, like the name.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was going to say that, and then I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't.
It's spelled a little
It's
bit differently.
Yeah,
But that's
it
all.
is.
Yeah.
It's so great to have you here. You are talking, your book has to deal with some things that are that are relevant now that a lot of teachers have question with, which is a genius hour, 20% time. And so you tackle all of these issues in your book. Can you tell us a little about your book and about where we can find it, and also what are the three kind of key things your educators can get from it?
Right. So my book right here, Inquiry and Innovation in the
Ooh.
Classroom, using 20% time Genius Hour and PBL to drive student success. And basically, a few years ago, I started a 20% project in my classroom, and it changed my teaching forever. You know, I had read Dan Pink's book Drive, like I think many of us have, and especially
And
people.
now, so for those who aren't familiar with Genius or 20% time, can you give like a real quick definition so they kind of know?
Yes. So Google has a structure kind of in their with their employees that they got to use 20% of their time to work on any project they liked, any project that they were passionate about, and things like Gmail and Google Earth all came out of this 20% time, right? So it's the ability to learn what you want and work and create on what you want. 20% time in the classroom is that same concept. Genius Hour, the same thing. It's using 20% of your class time or an hour of the week or so to give students autonomy to create, make, research, learn, remix what they're passionate about, what they're interested in. And it's really empowering for students, but also staff as well.
Okay, and what grade level did you start with? Because I've seen, I've seen a lot of elementary actually lately.
Yeah, so I did it with my 11th grade
Okay.
class, and it worked out really well. 11th grade English class, and then I took a different role in my district, and we did it with middle school students. We did it with elementary students, and there's such just a great community of Genius Hour and 20% teachers out there. If you look at the hashtag Genius Hour, hashtag 20 time, people like Joy Kerr, Kevin Brookhouser, Denise Cribbs. There's so many people out there that are doing great things with it, and they're putting all their resources out there for you. So this book is pretty much number one, the why. You know, why should you have this type of learning in our schools today, right? And basically, it takes it from the students learning 20% time in Genius Hour to also staff. If you think about it, Ed Camp and unconferences and things like that are kind of a form of that, right? You're going and learning what you want to learn, what you're passionate about. And so we talk everywhere from students to kind of staff doing this to schools as well, learning about it. And then it talks about the how, so the nitty-gritty. How are you going to actually bring this into your class, your school, with your curriculum and your schedule and everything else that goes into it? How are you going to do that? So that's a big part about it. And then it really gives you a lot of different resources to get started right away and get moving.
Oh, that's great. Now, what if, so did you, when you decided to do your Genius Hour 20% time project, how about the students that kind of look at you and are just like, and I know you got that with 11th graders for sure, who are kind of like, what? You want us to work on our passion?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How do you motivate students? I mean, what do you do to kind of get them prepared for this?
Yeah, so I wrote a post on my blog a while back called "When Genius Hour Fails," and the reason I wrote that is because I think every teacher that does inquiry-based learning projects will have students that don't want to inquire about anything, right? Because they're kind of used to playing the game of school, and so that's kind of where I start out, and where I started out with my students was saying, here's why, right? Here's the rationale and that type of thing. And when a student was really kind of didn't want to do something, I said, well, you want to make some money off of this? Because you can. If you want to do a project where you're creating something, a product, and you're selling it, that's okay. And so I would bring them through all different types of things to try to get them interested in something that they could do. whether it was setting up a little bracket of things they're doing while they're supposed to be doing schoolwork, things that they're doing on their free time, and just figuring out what they're interested in and passionate about. And a lot of that comes down to the teacher having more of a relationship with the students beyond just how you're doing in my class.
Now, what got you inspired to do this with your class?
So I read Dan Pink's book Drive, and then I also really kind of read an article on Edutopia and a number of different kind of articles that were all talking about what Google was doing and what have been doing in terms of kind of inquiry-based education. And I also had a class of 11th grade students that were very smart, but also cared about the grade, right? So I had all these students that just really cared about the grade, and I kind of instituted this project because I wanted to give them a project without a grade and based on what they're interested in, have that intrinsic motivation be a huge part. And so unlike, there's some other Genius Hour teachers and 20% time teachers that give a grade, but I didn't give any grade whatsoever on the project.
Wow. And they still enjoyed it, and they still, like, what were some of the meaningful projects and experiences that came out of that?
Yeah, so there were some really cool projects that came out of it. There was things from, putting together their own computer to taking apart motorcycle engines, that kind of like hands-on type thing, to a student who wanted to learn sign language. And she was a busy student in honors AP classes, and she had a niece that knew sign language, and she wanted to be able to talk to her niece, and she didn't have any time. She was working, she was playing sports. And when she got up there and performed a song in sign language to us, everybody was crying. It was one of those moments. And students learning how to play guitar and really doing horribly, but kind of talking about that, right? So one of the big things that we talked about was having epic failures, having epic fails. And so we would share, hey, what were some of your epic fails this week on 20% time? What did you really try at and fail? And so that kind of became like a badge of honor for our students. We had, somebody create a Facebook page for Wissahickon compliments for our school. So it was completely anonymous, but it was like anti-bullying that you would just give anonymous compliments to different students. So it was a full range of what students were doing with that 20% time.
Oh, that's amazing. So we're going to go ahead and close this out with another special announcement, which is that you are also giving a book away. So yay, that's exciting. Yep. And for this one, what we're going to do is they have to tweet your name on it, and they can find out if they go to they can go to the futureofeducation.com/arsconauthor. All lowercase. So they can find AJ Juliani, that is the Twitter handle.
Yep.
Find it, and they have to have the RSCon5. You have to have the RSCon5 hashtag, and we would like you to share one of your epic failures. Since you talk about the epic failure.
I love it.
And then you get to choose which one. Epic failure you like, and don't forget to give him your address.
Yes, make sure, and I'll make sure I'm in touch, but you'll get this. I'll sign it. My signature still looks like I'm in 6th grade, but I'll put it on there. And I'm really excited to kind of give this away. And there's a great community of people out there. So don't think that you just need this book. I think it's just a piece of the puzzle as to teachers using inquiry-based education and passion-based learning, just a great community out there. So get involved with that hashtag Genius Hour, hashtag 20time, and find some other folks doing it.
That's amazing, and thank you so much for what you're doing. I really love the Genius Hour, and I've read some of your stuff as well, some of your posts, and it's just amazing. I actually, because I had to do research on my 30 Goals book, and so I mentioned some of your stuff as well.
Good.
Because I just thought it was great. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
And bye. Don't forget to tweet your epic failure.
Yes. Send it to me. Thanks.
And now we will have Pernille, who's been patiently waiting. And of course, I invite her when she's drinking water.
Sorry. Yeah, I've been pretty under the weather for about a week now, so I feel like I've risen from the dead to join this hangout.
Oh my gosh, poor you.
It's all right. It's worth it. It's a lot of fun to be following the tweets throughout the day coming from RSCon, and it's always such a great event. So thanks for inviting me, Shelley.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I'll say this about Pernille too. Even within the first years of RSCon, and this is the fourth year that we have it, even though this is our fifth one. We had two one year. We were crazy like that. Pernille was part of that, and so I really appreciate having you here as an author too, because you just kind of finished what is it, 3 books you wrote this year or something?
Just two, thankfully.
I had a baby. Oh my
I
God.
had a baby. Yep, and bought a new house and got a new job. So I think we're good in the whole change department.
And yours is on student passion and unlocking their passion. Can you tell us a little, first of all, where can we get the book? And a little about student passion and what motivated you to write this book.
So the book is called Passionate Learners, Giving Our Classrooms Back to Our Students, and the title really says a lot about what the book is about. It's from Powerful Learning Press, which I'm very proud to be one of their authors. I was their 3rd person to have their book published. And it's really about how to invest and re-engage your classroom with your students and how to give it back to students. And it's partly my story of how I changed my classroom, and then it's also about what people can do and what kind of change they can implement right away. And it's not a system. It's not you need to follow this to the T. It's really about reflecting and figuring out what your change needs to be for the passion to come back into your classroom, and for students to be, I don't know, reconnected to the whole educational journey that's happening to them. And so it was a lot of getting to highlight my amazing students and just talking about what we do in Wisconsin. And it's just been a blast to see people read it and review it and let me know, like, oh, I tried this one idea and this is what happened. And it's just such a crazy thing to get to see people trying to change things based on what I've suggested.
Now, and I don't want you to have to talk too much. Poor you. Thank you so much for coming again.
Sure.
But kind of like what I asked AJ earlier, which was, so what do you do when you find those students that, and that's the thing about it, is that a lot of times, these students have never been asked before to share their passion, and then suddenly you get a teacher who's allows this. So how do you support them in feeling comfortable? Because a lot get very embarrassed and kind of shy with that, or may not even know what they're passionate about.
Oh, for sure. I mean, every year is a new journey, and every year I had to gain the students' trust to make sure that they didn't think I was crazy or that I was trying to get them, especially when I would say, how would you change education? How would you like to be taught? What are good teachers? All those conversations we would have. I would ask them to set their own rules for the classroom. They really thought that I was out to get them. And so it just became a big community building and scaffolding kids on different parts of the journey and acting on what they were telling me. And I think that's the biggest thing. We're quick to ask students' opinions, or at least some people are, but how often do we then turn around and actually do something with what they tell us? And so for me, it was always a matter of showing them that when they told me an idea or told me that they needed something to be changed, that I then actually went and did it. And so it was living up to the word that I had said to them every day. And it was always an incredible journey, and every year was different, which I loved. And to see students feel like they're in control of themselves and what they're doing is incredibly powerful, and not something I would ever move away from again.
And now I know you write about your learners, and I know that you have a deep personal connection with them. You were saying recently on Facebook something that they did for you.
Yeah, on the last day of school, and so this was my last day as a 5th grade teacher, because I've moved. I'm going to be a 7th grade teacher now in a different district. 2 of my students had used Google Translate for good and made this homemade card and written it in Danish, which is my native tongue. And for once, Google Translate actually did a pretty good job. It actually made sense, and it just brought tears to my eyes. I mean, how often do kids go home and think about who you are as a person and then create something very personal for you. And that's happened many times to me, and I just feel so lucky that I get to be a part of these kids' lives.
And that's just amazing. I was really touched by that story too. And when you're that kind of a teacher, and I think that really speaks about, the kind of author you are, and why people should really look at this book and getting it, is because that's the kind of response you get from your students. And that's purely amazing. And I know that really touched you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Did you want so tell us about these other books that you have as well. And I think you're working on a few right now.
Yeah, there's some ideas bouncing around my head that I'm talking to a publisher about, but I get to be a part of the Connected Educator series along with Tom Whitby and Steve Anderson and all those guys. I'm part of the first rollout of those books, and I got to write a book called Empowered Schools, Empowered Students, and it's really about flipping the power in schools and the control, and talking about how we can get teachers to feel like they're part of the journey, and then for those teachers to take those tools and put them into their classroom too. So half of the book is directed more towards admin, and then the other half is directed towards teachers. And it just has been such a fun ride to be a part of this series and to see all the other books in the series come to fruition too, and talking about putting small ideas out there that can make a big difference. And so that comes out in September, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's been a lot of fun. I told myself I needed a break from writing books, but you never know. We'll see. I don't know if I have any good ideas anymore in my head.
You probably need some rest.
Yeah.
But, so we won't leave without saying more exciting news, which is that they can actually get a copy of your book, your Student Passion book. And do you want to tell them what they have to do? Okay, so they have to use the hashtag RSCon5, and it's at Pernille Rip. I tweeted the link where you can even find Pernille's, and it's very simple. It's just your first and last names on Twitter. And so, do you want to tell them what they should answer? What is it? So Pernille would like you to say one idea for change that you would have within your classroom. So, and I think Pernille might have frozen there. So thank you so much, Pernille, for joining us. And don't forget to tweet her with the hashtag RSCon5 at Pernille Rip and an idea for change that you would have in your classroom. And we're going to move over to Steve Wheeler. Oh, it's so great to have you. I don't know, Steve, why are you muted?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, everything's crazy up there. All the top menu is really weird, but never mind. It's great.
Have you ever hung out before?
I hang out all the time, all over the world. Yes, I have. It's just a new setting for me.
Yeah, it's actually, it is a little bit different. I was doing a course with this, and all of a sudden they changed everything on me.
Yeah, they tend to do that. Yeah, that's Google for you, isn't it?
Well, it is such a great honor to have you here. It's kind of like we're having a farewell RSCon, because this is our last year of the big conference, and we're just going to keep having the mini cons. You were a keynote of last time.
Yeah.
But you've also been a keynote in the past, and it gives me a great way to actually tell you thank you so much for being a part of the Reform Symposium. But, you know, I have to say, and I've been doing these, being in education, seeing keynotes and plenaries, and you are the first and only one I've ever seen, and it really touched my heart with RSCon, that you went to all the, you went to many of the presenters' sessions and took notes and included that in your keynote, and you've done that every single year you've been at RSCon, and that's just so meaningful. So thank you so much. That's
Doesn't
really,
everyone do that? I mean, shouldn't everyone do that? Because after all, we're all here to learn, aren't we? Surely. I mean, that's why I do it, because I want to learn from everyone. Yeah, that's why I do it.
And we learned so much from you. And now I'm excited because I just found out with this author spotlight that you are coming out with a book about your blog. So tell us a little about that and when it comes out and what's the best place to follow to make sure that we can go get it when it comes out.
Well, it's interesting because I think it's must be 5 years since my last book came out. And that was published over your side of the pond. I do a lot of work over there, as you know. I just come back from New York a few weeks ago, where I gave a keynote there. But it started off. I was speaking at a conference in London in January, and one of the publishers happened to be in the audience, and she heard my keynote, and afterwards she came up and said, "Look, have you ever considered writing a book?" I said, "Well, not recently, no, but I have written books in the past." And it was Crown Publishers, Crown House, if you've heard of them. And yeah. Crown House said to me, "Look, we'd be interested in pursuing a book with you." And I said, "Well, how about I do one that's based on the text from some of my blogs with expansion of that, and kind of additions and some updates of some of the ideas that I've been writing about on my blog, some of the things I've been trying with my own students and some of the things I've seen in schools around the world." And she said, "Right, we're up for that." And so I was signed within about a month of us speaking, and I've got 2 books on the board, to be honest with you.
Wow.
The first one, the one that's coming out in is called Learning and Teaching with Ease, as you would expect. And then the second one, which we're going to be working on for release probably later in the year, maybe the fall of 2015, will be called Disruptive Learning. So I've got a.
I like the title of that.
Yeah. So the first one is really the Teaching and Learning with Ease one is really all about how can we combine theory and practice in the digital age. And often it's a question that's ignored because people go off and they start to use the technology and they think, yeah, how can I use this now? Or they think about the theory and think, how can this be applied? But I think bringing the two together is a very powerful thing because it gives you justification for what you're doing as an educator in the classroom. And this is why I'm writing this book. So it's drawing upon some of my blog posts and some of the parodies that I brought out. So there's a bit of humor and then a bit of fun, but also it's there's a lot more to it than that because I'm adding extra commentary and writing, bringing it up to date for 2015.
And I'm so glad that you are writing a book because as far as I love ed tech, e-learning, all of that, but you are one of the people that I actually receive a lot of insight from. I follow your slide shares all the time, and the great thing about it is that when you give your talks, you kind of take us the mind. Like my mind is always like I feel like my mind went on this long journey, and then at the end I'm just like, wow, I saw this and I saw that, and it's like a road trip. You take the mind through a road trip of all these possibilities, and it's not just like the cool things, but I really sense from you that you really are very observant and really pay attention to people and what they do with the technology. And so I think you provide a lot of insight. What do you, and I know you get asked this all the time, so that's why I'm going to ask you. So what do you see as maybe a technology or something that is going to be disrupting learning?
Well, we're already seeing the signs of this. We're seeing kids bringing their handhelds and their mobile, their cell phones and so on into the classroom now. Even if they're not meant to be using them, they're still using them. And I think one of the keys to success is where teachers suddenly realize that they're not going to be able to stop the kids from using their mobile, their devices, their cell phones and so on. So why not harness the power of it and actually focus it to something really good, something that's pedagogically sound, something which relates to the learning there and then. And I noticed this years ago that if you combine mobile phones and cellular technologies, if you combine those with things like social media, you've got an incredibly powerful combination there. And so we bring Twitter live into the classroom. We have Twitter screens, and we select hashtags for each session. Each lesson I run has a unique hashtag. And people follow that and come in from outside and follow what I'm doing and what the kids, the students are doing and so on. And amazing the dialogue that they can have with with people from outside of even outside the country, people who are real experts in the field. You should come in sometime and join in with one of our hashtags.
I should. I didn't even know you did.
Yeah, we do, and so I'll tell you a story about once. This is a true story. It actually happened. Some of my students were talking on Twitter. I asked them to challenge and to question and to share content that they found which is useful for the rest of the students, and then it comes up onto the screen and everyone can see it. And sometimes I retweet some of the comments if they're really great and really profound, which a lot of them are. And on one occasion, two of the students at the back were talking about some set reading that I'd given them, one of the books that was on the reading list for their degree course. And they mentioned this in Twitter, and they named the author. Now, that author happens to follow me on Twitter. We know each other.
Oh, really?
And within 20 minutes...
actually, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, within 20 minutes, he was actually online on Twitter answering their questions, and the students were going...
Wow.
They couldn't believe it. It was so inspirational. Can you imagine how inspirational that would be? So
yeah.
These are disruptive things that are happening. The new tools and technologies and how we combine them pedagogically. How we combine them with real purpose. Learning is a journey, and all these things are kind of little milestones that you can put into it to help them along that journey. And so I really think that disruption is going to come from the students, not from us.
Yeah, and you see that already, and then I try to tell people that, and that's what I really like about you is that you see so much inside. I sometimes feel like, what you say is in 10 years' time, because it seems like so much is still behind, like the fact that there are still a lot of schools that don't allow cell phones in the classroom and don't, and it's not because they don't have the technology. It's because they just would rather. Actually, I find a lot of schools that have it are the ones that ban it. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is I'm giving a keynote tomorrow at a conference in the south west of England. I've only got about 40 miles to travel to get there, and it's a teachers conference. And one of my messages tomorrow will be think about using mobile phones, cell phones in the classroom, because firstly I'll show them a list of objections from teachers. Like we're going to lose control. Wow, that's a terrible thing for a teacher to lose control. Why don't we give control to the kids? And then things like, well, they're disruptive. They disrupt the lesson. So let's disrupt it in a positive way. And there's always an answer to those kind of arguments that they give against it. Oh, it's dumbing down language for the kids because they do text speak. Actually, no, they know the difference between when they have to write an essay and when they have to text. These are two different literacies, and they're actually learning more literacies than we ever learned when we were at school. And so, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow with a whole bunch of teachers, and hopefully I'll convince some of them to go back into their classrooms and change the rules and let kids use their cell phones. Well,
I believe that you could, because you're very, very inspirational. And, I think that's another thing that's really great is that when you say, and you have so much knowledge and so much insight, and I think because you live within it, I know that you're constantly reading, you're constantly learning from so many people. So I know that's one of the reasons why you have this insight. But when you talk with teachers, you're very supportive. You're not the type of keynote that I've seen attack teachers and say, if you don't use it, you're you're very supportive, and you do the coaxing and stuff, but
wow. I mean, that's my business.
That's great.
I originally trained as a psychologist, as you know, and I do observe a lot of what people are doing and saying, and I think for the reasons behind why they behave in particular ways. That's what I'm trained to do, and so it comes out, I suppose, in my speeches. I'm very privileged to travel the world. I get to all corners of the globe, and although the travel is very tiring, when I'm actually in those places and I'm speaking to teachers and educators all over the world, that's inspirational for me as well. So it's not one way. Believe me, it's both ways. It's reciprocal, and I learn an incredible amount from everyone I meet, and that's just my passion is to learn and to pass on that learning, and learning is like love. You can give it away for free, but you still get to keep it, don't you? And that's my mantra in life,
I love that. And so, what would you suggest for teachers who are just kind of they see all this disruptive learning? They see, the Snapchat and the Vines, and they're still getting used to the idea of this because it's a culture shock too. It's sort of like we're assimilating into a whole different culture that we didn't grow up with. So we're still in the assimilation process. How do they begin to kind of get comfortable with it so that way if they have this in the classroom, when they want to, be with their learners and so what are ways that they can begin to kind of assimilate in that?
Well, I'm going to show a slide tomorrow which will exemplify this issue. There's a huge chasm between what they expect and what the students expect who are coming into the classroom. Students are a different generation. They're pushing the envelope in terms of what they're using. So I show a picture that I took in the London Underground station, and it says "Mind the gap." And there's a big hole, and the issue is if you don't mind the gap, you're going to fall through, you're going to break your ankle or worse. Whereas if you understand that there's a gap there and you have to step over it from one territory into another, then you're aware of the gap, you overcome the gap, and you straddle it, you cross over. And I think that firstly teachers have to be aware there's a gap. Secondly, they have to be aware of the dangers of that gap if they don't pay attention to it. And thirdly, they have to step over it. And meet the students halfway, and that's one of the messages I'm going to give tomorrow to this group of teachers that I'm talking to is that once you're aware of the things that are happening, and once you're aware of the potential and the possibility and the incredible amount of change that can be made, for the better, to increase and extend and enrich learning experiences for students of all ages, then you are going to want to step over that gap and actually make a difference.
And on that same note, so what was one of those, maybe like an app or maybe a technology or a tool or that you kind of felt like, because we think of you as such a great tech guru and stuff, but I know me, like I got my iPhone like about, I don't know, a month ago, and there's still times when I'm like, what am I doing? Like, just because you're known as, I know you have those little moments. So, is there any, like, one of those moments you'd be willing to share?
Shall I let you into a secret? I actually have in front of me right now, I'm working on a 10-year-old laptop. 10 years old, and it chugs away, but it still works. I call it Keith. After Keith Richard, the Rolling Stone, because it's old, it's falling to pieces, but it's still working, So I've got Keith in front of me, and I'll tell you another secret. I also have in my pocket an iPhone 1, and it still works. It's my first ever iPhone. I was one of the first people in Britain to have an iPhone, and it still works, and I still carry it with me, and I still use it. But I do use ultra-modern technologies as well. I see no reason to put aside the old technologies, just like I see no reason to put aside some of the old methods and techniques that we've used when we first started teaching 20, 30 years ago. But we have to also have the new ideas, the new technologies alongside them. So I go into a classroom now, and I see in one of my lecture rooms in the university, I see an interactive whiteboard, and I see digital projectors, and I see augmented reality and all that kind of stuff, robotics. We're playing with all that. We're doing Raspberry Pi, and we're doing Makey and all that kind of stuff. But I also see an overhead projector in the corner and a flip chart paper on the wall, and it can all be used. Everything can be used to teach and learn from. And I don't discount anything at all. I take my students in the summer months. Sometimes we go outside and sit on the grass with nothing to write on, nothing to connect with. I say, leave everything behind, we'll lock the door, and we go outside and we just talk. And that's learning through dialogue, learning through conversation. So that's a tool as well. Anything can be used. So, I don't discount any technology. Anything at all that you think can be applied, think it through and then use it and watch what happens.
There was a recent, a post that you had written that I really loved, and at the bottom you had this quote, and it said something, and I quote it all the time too on the slide, but it said something about along the lines of technology is the driver, but pedagogy is the I'm not
Yeah,
remembering it.
technology is pedagogy is the driver.
Driver.
Technology is the vehicle. Yeah, but that wasn't my quote. I borrowed that from someone else. It might even be someone like Tom Whitby. I don't know. It probably was Tom or someone like him, or Tom Barrett maybe. I don't know. One of the Toms did it. But
Well,
yeah.
no, I know. Yeah, because I quote that and I put found at Steve Wheeler.
Don't put my
.net.
name next to it.
But
It's not me.
I loved it because it was, I thought that was, I just loved the way that it said that as well. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we see all these tools and we're like, because it's just advanced so quickly that sometimes we tend to lose ourselves and get blown by it when it's the same pedagogy we've been using. We know how to use that,
That's
And
right.
I think that you really show that in your blog as well. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being with us. I am super excited because not only do I get to hang out with you here, but I found out I get to hang out with you in Australia. So
You're
I am
coming to ours
looking
next
forward
year,
to
aren't you?
that.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
I'm doing a keynote in Brisbane, and I'm doing a full one-day masterclass as well. So people can come along and hang out with me and the rest of the bunch for 6 hours, learning about something to do with technology.
That conference looks amazing. It just has so many different things that you can do. So I am looking forward to that. That's going to be a highlight of my year. I'm hoping we see a kangaroo together. I've never been to Australia.
I've been 3 times, 4 times now. We can crack a few tinnies if you like. Right.
You're going to have to show me the whole ropes.
Crack a few tinnies. You know what that means? Crack a few tinnies.
No.
Have a few drinks. A tinny's a can of drink, and then crack it. It's open a few cans.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, and you've just been such a great part of RSCon. We're going to continue to have the mini cons, so we'll be looking forward to having you more, and we're going to try and make these spotlights. So hopefully, when your book comes out, we can have you talk about your brand new book.
Why not? Why not? Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.